All right, we're going to take a look at solving absolute value equations. So, to solve absolute value of x equals 9, we are asking ourselves the question, what values of x would satisfy the property where if you take that number x, you absolute value it, you would get 9. Well, there are two options for what x is in yellow each time here, of what x can be. So either x equals 9 or x equals negative 9, right? So those are our two answers, x equals 9 or x equals negative 9. Again, just looking at what's here, it's what values of x would you absolute value to get a 9? And if you plugged in 9 for x, this would work. If you plug in negative 9 for x, you'd have on the left side absolute value of negative 9, which would be a 9. And so the equation would be satisfied. Just keep in mind that writing absolute value of x equals 9 or absolute value of x equals negative 9 would be incorrect. We needed to really answer the question about x. I know that this says absolute value of x up here, but in the end we have to answer a question about x. That's why you see here x equals 9 or x equals negative 9. Okay, let's solve absolute value of x equals 7. So what values of x satisfy absolute value of x equals 7? That's either x equals 7 or x equals negative 7. So our answer here, x equals 7 or x equals negative 7. Again, this answer line just talks about x because we have to talk about x. We've got to solve for x. There's no absolute values written in this last line. This thought process in this box here is our processing of what's going on with the absolute value, but our final answer does not have absolute value. Okay, what about absolute value of m equals 8? So what values of m satisfy absolute value of m equals 8? That's either m equals 8 or m equals negative 8. So those are our two answers. What about absolute value of z equals negative 4? This one's almost a trick question. What values of z satisfy absolute value of z equals negative 4? Well, here's the thing. The result of an absolute value can never be a negative number. So what number could you possibly absolute value to get negative 4? It's just not going to happen. There's no solution. So absolute value of a variable equals a negative number, no solution. Okay, let's look at absolute value of x. Then a minus 3 equals 6. Well, first we add 3 to both sides. And we have absolute value of x is equal to 9. So our final answer would be x equals 9 or x equals negative 9. Now let's look at absolute value inside the absolute value of x minus 3. So yeah, sorry for how this is said, but absolute value of x minus 3, that is equal to 6. Now, would adding 3 to both sides lead to absolute value of x equals 9, like our first line of the previous answer? Well, unfortunately, no. Adding 3 to both sides would result in absolute value of x minus 3, then plus a 3 equals 9. And here's the thing. The minus 3 that's inside the absolute value and the plus 3 that's outside of the absolute value, those are not going to cancel with each other. So what are we going to do instead? Well, let's take the contents that's inside the absolute value and call that u. So u is going to be x minus 3, and that means that the problem at the top is going to turn into absolute value of u is equal to 6. So everywhere we see an x minus 3, we replace it with a u. So we have absolute value of u is equal to 6. And now we just ask ourselves what values of u satisfy absolute value of u equals 6. It's either u is equal to 6 or u equals negative 6. So that's what we report. Our answer to absolute value of u equals 6 is below the box. It's u equals 6 or u equals negative 6. But now that we've solved for u, this is the time we now go back and replace each u with an x minus 3. At the beginning of the problem, we replaced x minus 3 with a u. So now we replace every u with an x minus 3. So we have x minus 3 equals 6, or x minus 3 equals negative 6. Add 3 to both sides, you get x equals 9, or x equals negative 3. Let's just point out all of the following things I have seen as incorrect things to do, because people are just trying to mimic a process. So pay very close attention to what each line is doing here, and how each line led to the next line. And these boxes here are my thought bubbles to trying to let you know what I'm thinking about. I've seen people write things like, instead of this line here, I've seen people write absolute value of u equals 6 or absolute value of u equals negative 6. That's incorrect. I've seen people write absolute value of x minus 3 equals 6 or absolute value of x minus 3 equals negative 6. In some sense, that's actually the same as the previous thing because u is the same as x minus 3. I've also seen absolute values on both sides. I've also seen people write absolute value of u equals x minus 3 as in this right here. But the thing is, it's u that we're defining to be the contents. Sorry, I can't seem to highlight it. There we go. U is the stuff that's inside the absolute value. So it's just the x minus 3. I mean, it's the stuff inside the absolute value, meaning excluding the absolute value symbol itself. I've also seen u equals absolute value of x minus 3. So look, really be very literal about this. If you take this line here, absolute value of x minus 3 equals 6, and you erase this x minus 3 on the inside because that's what's right here, and you scratch that out and you put a u in instead, you'd have absolute value of u equals 6. And this is why earlier we looked at solving absolute value of just a variable is equal to a number. Okay, let's take a look at absolute value of 2x plus 1 equals 15. So by using u equals 2x plus 1, so I'm using, sorry if the colors are getting in the way here, but everything highlighted in yellow is equal in value. So u we're using to equal 2x plus 1, so those should be equal in value. We're going to get absolute value of u is equal to 15. Again, u doesn't have absolute values, right? U is equal to 2x plus 1, but then the equation in the beginning turns into absolute value of u is equal to 15. So then we answer what values of u satisfy absolute value of u equals 15, and it's either u, no absolute value, equals 15, or u, no absolute value, equals negative 15. So we report that. U equals 15 or u equals negative 15. No absolute value in that line. This is our way of processing what the absolute value does. So by processing it, we no longer write it. Now that we've solved for u here and there, we should replace u with 2x plus 1. Again, everything highlighted in yellow on this slide is equal. So 2x plus 1 equals 15, or 2x plus 1 equals negative 15. Subtract 1 on both sides of each equation. You get 2x equals 14, or 2x equals negative 16. Divide by 2 on both sides of both equations, and you get x equals 7, or x equals negative 8.